We're on a short little trip from Raleigh-Durham International KRDU over to Piedmont Triad International KGSO. And we're just a little bit over halfway, and we're cruising at 4,500 feet. And I can't decide if it's my imagination, but it seems that I'm smelling some odor coming out from the instrument panel. Okay, well that's not imaginary smoke. We have definitely got a problem. So the first thing I'm doing is kicking off the autopilot and trimming the airplane up for level flight. Next, since the smoke is a serious problem, I'm going to find a place to land immediately. The G1000 actually makes this process simple. It's just a 3-button press. Nearest soft key, direct to button, enter. The closest airport is Burlington Alamance Regional, KBUY, about 4 miles to the northwest. I need to set the heading bug to 330 degrees, which is the bearing to Burlington. And while I'm making this turn to 330 degrees, I'll bring up my emergency checklist. Okay, engine fire and flight, that looks about right. Hey, we got flames. I'm gonna buzz through the checklist. Mixture cut off, fuel shut off, fuel pumps off, master alt battery off, standard battery is already armed, throttle idle. Now we go to the forced landing checklist. Most of this I've already done. Ignition switch off. Here's another handy feature of the G1000. Just hold the COM frequency toggle for 2 seconds and it will automatically tune COM 1 to 121.5, the emergency frequency. Now I'm ready to declare the emergency. Mayday, 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 November 227 Whiskey Alpha, emergency landing, engine fire. 4 miles southeast of Burlington Regional at 4,500. Attempting emergency landing at Kilo Bravo Uniform Yankee, November 7 Whiskey Alpha. Finally, I'm going to ID the transponder so the controller will see my blip show up on his radar screen. That is, if the G1000 is still working, which I'm not so sure. We got lucky that the airport is so close, so I don't have to worry too much about altitude. I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust the G1000 much longer, so I'm going to watch my compass and head for the airport. Okay, well we can relax just a little, and all that's left to do is look for the airport. So there it is at about 11 o'clock. And I'm actually carrying a little more altitude than I'd like, but I think what I'll do is just side slip it down rather than lose too much altitude right now. I'm using my secondary instruments because I don't have any trust at all in the G1000 at this point. It looks like I've lost gyro as my attitude indicator is off, but the other 2 instruments seem to be functioning properly. So I'll just monitor my airspeed and my altitude with these other 2 as I make my way around for a downwind at this easternly runway. I'd like to get down under 2,000 feet before I get downwind, but I'm not sure I can. Okay, I'm abeam the landing spot now. And I'd like to extend out a little bit here, but I'm a bit nervous about that. So I'm just going to abbreviate. Okay, I'm going to make my turn, hope for the best. 1,500 feet, mighty high. Okay, I'm crabbing, left pedal to the floor. Thank goodness this is a long runway. I'll try to announce this in my best Tom Hanks voice. November 7 Whiskey Alpha is clear of the active. Well, a lot of things happen in a short period of time. So it goes with emergencies. Let's see if we can put together a summary and see what we've learned. The emergency landing you just watched was made without a lot of practice or prearrangement, so you could get a feel for what a real emergency might be like. With that in mind, you might be quite critical of how I handled it. That's fair. Let's just say we can all learn by watching the mistakes others make. I hope you will be critical and say to yourself, I would have done this, or he should have done that. That's the best way to learn sometimes. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I simply desire us all to get better at our craft. Let's make this an educational opportunity. There's an old aviation axiom that applies perfectly with emergency landings. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Even if you don't do any of the other two, keeping control of the aircraft can allow you the opportunity to talk about your experiences the next day. So, as soon as you notice there's a major problem, disengage the autopilot so you can get control of the aircraft. If the aircraft is flying weird because there's some control problem or something like that, the sooner you start flying the plane yourself, the better you'll be at dealing with the situation. In my case, if a part had flown off the engine, the aircraft might be severely tail heavy, and as soon as I turned off the autopilot I would realize that and might have time to adjust to it. As soon as you lose power, it's vitally important to trim for best glide speed in order to buy you as much air time as possible. For the 172, that's about 68 to 70 knots. Once we have the airplane under control, we need to turn our attention to navigation, that is, finding a place to land. If you're lucky enough to have the G1000 on board, this is an easy step. It's just 3 button pushes: the nearest soft key, the direct to key, the enter key. That's it. The closest airport will be at the top of the list, so that's the one you have chosen. But if you have more time and more altitude, you might choose another airport. Just be careful you don't spend too much time on this. And treat the airport as a planned landing spot, but be looking for places to ditch along the way in the event things go bad. And don't try to stretch the landing. If the airport's too far away, find a place to ditch. With any sort of power failure, your instruments may or may not be reliable, so start by setting the heading bug to the bearing to the airport. Don't trust your instruments. Use your compass for guidance, as that's a hard instrument to break. After getting your airplane under control and finding a landing spot, now it's time to talk to somebody. Again, if you have a G1000, finding somebody to talk to is a little bit easier. Just press and hold the COM1 frequency toggle for 2 seconds and it will auto-tune to 121.5, the emergency frequency. When you announce your emergency, be sure to include the distance to your planned landing spot, your relative position to the site, and your altitude. This will help the controller locate you on radar. You can also help this along by pressing the ident button on your transponder. This will cause your radar blip on the controller's radar to go bright, helping the controller to locate you. Anything you can do at this stage to help others locate you can save your life. Use this opportunity. Here's a big one. Use the emergency checklist. You might be thinking, I don't have time to read a checklist. I have an emergency. I know it seems counterintuitive, but this is the time when you need written guidance. In an emergency, you're likely in some sort of paralysis. What do I do? What do I do? And you might sit there wasting precious seconds trying to decide what to do. Use that time to find your checklist and go to the appropriate section. And having a checklist to follow will just help calm you down and keep you from panicking. And choose your landing site carefully. Don't try to stretch your landing to an airport that's too far away. Look for a big field or wide open area. And as tempting as it is, roads are not runways. Roads have street signs, trees along its edges, telephone poles, traffic, power lines, underpasses, all sorts of obstacles. Roads generally are terrible landing sites. Stay away from roads. And if you're going to crash, as silly as this sounds, find the softest, cheapest target you can to plow into. If your choices are somebody's house or their barn, choose their barn. It might just be their barn is filled with hay. And above all else, fly the airplane. Don't worry about the rules. Don't worry about communication protocols. Do what you have to do. It's your life that's at stake. And again, depending on the nature of your emergency, don't trust your instruments. Learn to use your compass. The compass will almost always work. Here are some final words about the landing or the crash landing. Don't stretch the glide into a stall. You want to always land under control as best you can. Of course, try to land into the wind if possible, but don't take that idea too far. If turning into the wind involves an extreme maneuver, go ahead and land downwind. Avoid steep turns. This is a killer. No more than 90 degrees maximum. As you saw, I was guilty of doing that, trying to lose altitude and making that last turn. And if your landing site is on a steep terrain, land uphill, even if that's downwind. I know I'm beating this one to death, but don't land on roads or parking lots. Fields are the best. Hit the softest, cheapest object at the slowest speed. Simple stuff. And finally, it's better to hit something under control than to stall and drop it in. Well, I hope this has been worth your while. I'd appreciate your comments, so please participate in this educational opportunity. Your feedback is very important to all of us. And as always, I really do appreciate those of you who follow my videos. And I hope you'll let me know what you think of this new series that I'm starting. And as always, thanks for watching.